Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Fidel Osorio, and I am a research analyst here at the Research Evaluation Center, and I'm going to be today's main host for today's event. I am also joined here by my team at the Research and Evaluation Center, and I'm going to first pass it off to Sheyla to introduce herself.
Oh, hi. My name is Richard. I'm a research analyst also at the center. I work along with the data team, which you will see in a few minutes. I'm happy to be here and happy St. Patrick's Day. Gina.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Gina, and I'm a senior researcher on the data team at the REC. I'm looking forward to any questions you have and pass it on to Sheyla now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheyla Delgado. I am one of the deputy directors at the Research and Evaluation Center, which Fidel is going to tell you a little bit about. I am particularly excited that we are getting to present some of the work that we've been doing with the NYPD data over many years. And we are very grateful to the city and all of the city agencies that make this data available for researchers and community folks to use. We're going to share some of what we've done to tighten the data in the record so that we can use it to answer questions regarding causal inference. And Fidel is going to focus on one of the data of the NYPD data sets, but there are over 6 or maybe 6 that are available. We follow a similar process for most of them. And keep in mind that this process is cyclical. This is what we have done to the data to help improve the quality of it. We not only look forward to your questions, but also to your suggestions and maybe the process that you all engage on to also improve the quality of the data. And I'm not sure if Jeff has co-host privileges, but he's also here. He's the director of the center. And thank you everyone for being here.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for those warm introductions. And yes, happy St. Patty's Day. And thank you, NYC Open Data for all the work and support that they have in supporting our endeavors here at the center. So just to go into detail about who we are as a research center, our long title is we are the Research and Evaluation Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the City University of New York, but we like to shorten our name to simply John Jay Rec or REC. So if you hear me say that throughout the presentation, I am referring to our center. What is our center's mission? Our center's mission is primarily focused on making and producing research studies that understand and evaluate the criminal justice system. This can be from the police to small initiatives and programs and policies that are trying to help individuals who are impacted by the justice system. We also pride ourselves on using a data-driven approach to our research methods and making sure that our research is available and accessible to all people who are interested in learning more about the criminal justice system and the initiatives that are ongoing to help those impacted. To just explain a little bit more about what we do here is we use a place-based research method for most of our studies. What does that mean? Research place-based studies are usually focused around places and communities as a geographical unit. This is a way to help us understand what is happening over time in a particular location and a way for us to compare places together for over periods of times and stuff like that. So our geographical units that we usually use are neighborhood tabulation areas, which are provided to us by the New York City Department of City Planning. the census tract and census blocks that are both provided by the US Census Bureau. Some of the projects that we have used these research methods in is the evaluation of pure violence, the mayor's action plan under de Blasio administration, smart tools, and the list does continue on to the next slide. Police reform initiative and rehabilitation, reinvention collaborative, and social and I'm going to use the acronym that we use internally called CIPRA, but its long title is the Social Impact Partnership to Pay for Results Act, which basically is a study focused on how we can reduce federal savings, and it's there. But what I really want to talk about in this list is also the data bits that we produce as a team, talking about shooting trends that you can also find available on our website, talking about the different shootings and where they're happening, where they're located in our city. So we're going to now move into the data inspection process. Many people might also call this data sanitization or data wrangling, depending on what your flavor is of data analysis. And we like to use this quote when we're talking about data is data errors are like mice. There is never just one. And that is from our benevolence center director, Jeffrey Butts. And so let's just jump right in. Whenever we're starting a data inspection process, we like to review the documentation. Documentation, or sometimes referred to as data dictionaries, is the starting points for any sort of data analysis. It will help you, it will give you insight into data sets, or it gives us insight into data sets on how to move forward and how to use the data and to understand more deeply than just the surface level what's in the data. In addition to that, we also, especially when we're working with open data information, is we need to find supporting information. This supporting information, especially for government data, is extremely crucial and helpful in providing information on how to get a clear understanding of the data. And especially because open data is so good at data documentation, and the agencies themselves are also really good at making sure that their information, what they do, is publicly available. It does make it quite easy for us to understand what is happening with the data that we're looking at. The next step is actually cleaning values. We usually start with trying to understand where are missing values, where are repetitive values and unusual values. And then because we are primarily focused on place-based studies, we are looking specifically at understanding geographical values. And we're going to go really deep into that in just a moment and an example data sets that we have been working on for the past year. Let's just a quick note that I wanted to that we want to include in this presentation is that when we're looking at police data, we're not necessarily looking at what's considered what many people refer to as crime data. Police data is a record of police interaction and police is a record of police involvement in a community. What it is, it represents a person being accused of a crime, usually, especially in the criminal summons data that we're about to talk about. But being accused of a crime does not mean a crime has actually been committed, and that is up to a court to adjudicate. So let's jump into the criminal summons data. So as of right now, the open data portal allows us to access 2006 to 2022 of the entire series of criminal summons data. Right now, that includes just under 5.5 million records. So I'm going to just define what a criminal summons is. More colloquially, it's usually referred to as a ticket. If someone says, hey, I got a ticket from the police, that is usually what a criminal summons is. And it is issued to a person to ask them to appear in front of a criminal court to face misdemeanor charges. The top 5 offenses when exploring some of the criminal summons data, and which account for 44% of all the observations that we have seen, is right here. And the one that we want to point out the most is that consumption of alcohol is such a large portion of the observation. It is 26% of those 5 million records. So a little bit more about the data. So this is the information that is provided to us in the series. So we have a unique identifiers or summons keys, offense information, which is all information related to what the summons was created for, some of the demographics of the person who the ticket was issued to, jurisdiction information of the NYPD, and the geographical information of where the ticket was issued, which borough was issued in, latitude and longitude, and XY coordinates, which we're not going to really talk about today, so don't worry too much about that. And yeah, here's a focus of what we're going to be talking about today. One thing I do want to point out is that longitude and latitude of ticket issuance is not exact. The NYPD uses what are called mid-block coordinates. So let's say I'm at an address, the ticket is going to be issued in the center line of the street, not necessarily right in front of the door or of the address. And that becomes very important later on in what I'm about to jump into. So the 3 different things that we're really looking out for and what we're going to go really deep into in this conversation is observations that are geotagged to a precinct, borough mismatches, and precinct mismatches. So the first thing we're going to really talk about is geotagging offenses and tickets to NYPD precincts. The NYPD footnotes say that an observation that is geotagged or is located at a precinct house is a fill-in for missing information that they may not know exactly where that ticket was issued at the location. So as a way to handle missingness, they fill in the precinct Latin longs with that. As when we're evaluating data and specifically looking at criminal summonses, we would like to know, first of all, if those tickets are where those tickets are located, because that could mean potential error in the reporting of that information that is in the series. Our fabulous team here at RAC has produced these geolocations, again, using that mid-block or the center line of the address of an NYPD precinct, and then also using the tax lots of an NYPD precinct to best understand and best accurately locate observations that are precinct locations. And that's all I'm going to say about how that is, but Gina on our team will definitely be able to answer any additional questions that you may have in the Q&A section. But we're going to now explore what that actually means for criminal summons. So in 2006, over 90% of the observations of that year are actually geotagged to a precinct house. That works out to 62% of all the errors that exist. All of the errors, 62% of all of the geotagged observations, which is a really, really high number. And just to expand a little bit more on that, we do definitely see a decline from 2007 on, where that error does fall below 10% per year. Spatially distributed at the NCA level, we can see that there is a high concentration in the South Bronx and Harlem and North Brooklyn. This is definitely what we're trying to avoid when we're trying to create a fair study and not put and understand best where cleaner values are in the data set. So now we're going to move on to geographic mismatches. So this is when the lat long information doesn't match the information that's actually written in the data set. So going back to borough values and precinct values, so just a quick breakdown of those. The precinct mismatch count is actually only 5% of the series, the smallest error that we have seen across the data set in the geographic category. And then borough mismatches is almost 12% of the series with non-regular values and missing counts. So there are something really curious happened when looking at criminal summons that we had not seen before, is that the value New York instead of one of the 5 boroughs of the city of New York was actually reported in the data set. The other thing is also missing values is something that we're going to talk about here as well. And I'll get to why that is in just in a couple of slides. So the spatial distribution of offenses with precinct mismatches is definitely visible in Northern Staten Island, in Northern Brooklyn, and parts of Manhattan and the South Bronx. Again, this is what we're trying to understand where these errors are and trying to minimize their effect on our studies. And this is also the borough mismatch. So again, there's concentration in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and some in the Bronx. What does that look like as a mutually exclusive count? So these are the breakdowns of how there's basically counts of the observations with errors. So again, geotag to the precinct is the highest error at that third bar. Precinct mismatches is the lowest, and then borough mismatches is the second highest, and then all the number of observations that have an error in every category is there as well. And then this is again those numbers broken down in a cross table. So we're going to jump into something that we call the cleaning phase. This is where we try to use other shape files, other files that we have that are known to clean information. And sorry, I completely forgot that I missed that. That's how we validate the information to make sure that to understand where the errors are. We're measuring them against NYPD's precinct shape file, which is a geographical map of all of the police precincts in the city of New York with their borough and precinct information, and we're mapping all this information to that. So sorry about that if that was a little confusing. I do realize I glided over that fact, but this is really important now. So when we talk about cleaning values, we're talking about New York values. We're trying our best to reduce that error of the borough values. So 99% of those New York values actually fall within the borough of Manhattan. We just stumbled upon it. We thought, oh, maybe as New York County is also Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan, it could possibly have just been a placeholder that way. And it seems to be that is, and with such a high number of values within the borough of Manhattan, we thought it would be prudent to replace those values with Manhattan as a way to reduce that error. The next thing that we did was also reduce the number of missing values in the borough column. We also mapped, again, looking at the NYPD precinct information, we checked to see if what was the error of NYPD precincts against that are reported in the set against what their lat long information is saying, and 100% of all of the observations of the missing borough have a correct precinct count. So we felt, again, comfortable enough to replace those missing values with the ones reported from the lat long of that, again, that we're getting from the NYPD precinct information. So what does that look like when we're trying to reduce error? So see that borough mismatch count drops significantly, reducing the number of observations that we now actually get to keep and save for study and analysis. Precinct mismatches and geotag to precincts, they're a little bit harder to try to fix, but those are the ones that our team found available information to be able to actually save for our studies. And then those numbers are then again broken down. So that's mutually exclusive value right there. Hovering, I think you can see my mouse. That 47 is the significant reduction in borough mismatches. So just a quick summary about what I've just spoken about. So inspecting data through geographical lens to ensure accuracy for place-based studies is the core of the reason why we do this process, and to save as many records as possible for the study. So in this process, we saved about 87,000 records from not being able to be used in the study. And then also to officially assess where are the errors in our, to see where the errors are. Our unofficial threshold is 10% to fully consider a value usable. So that is something that we try our hardest to get under if possible. So that is it for today. And thank you everybody for joining. I'd like to also say thank you to all of our funders who have supported our endeavors in these studies and all the information that we have gained in order to present to you today. And I'd just like to thank my team. This has been a really fun and enjoyable experience. And I just want to say thank you to the REC for all the great work that we do. So I think we're going to just leave it on this slide, and I'm going to ask my teammates if they could monitor those questions that I see are piling in.
I am not sure I am clear on what defines a precinct mismatch and a borough mismatch. So what we did is, so the criminal summons data comes with precinct values and comes with lat and longs. What we did was we took the data and we spatially aggregated with the NYPD precinct shapefile, and we cross-referenced the precinct values that come with the data with the precinct shapefile to see if they match. In some cases, we will see, for an example, some cases we will see that this specific observation was tagged to the 40th precinct according to the data, but when you spatially aggregate the data using the coordinates, that specific observation is actually happened in different precinct and different borough, different neighborhood. We did the same thing with the boroughs. We took the borough values from the PD data, spatially aggregated with a borough shapefile, and we cross-referenced that. An example would be a few slides earlier, some examples where that the coordinates place the observation in Brooklyn, but the PD puts it that that happened in the Bronx. That would be an example. I think Fidel's going up to the one you just passed.
There we go.
That one, yeah. So in this picture, the data according to the data, this observation happened in the Bronx. If you look in Brooklyn, but when you use the coordinates to do the spatial aggregation, it actually happened in Brooklyn. So thanks for sharing your process in detail. Could you talk about how you decide how much work time you put into data cleaning, and when you begin to do some analysis on the data, acknowledging some remaining errors? Data cleaning can be endless, but with diminishing result returns. Passes on to Fidel since he worked with the cleaning process on this one. This was a big one. Or
I'll take
Sheyla.
Oh.
Yeah, Sheyla.
So working with data is not a linear process. It's very much like a back and forth, back and forth. The overall reality of doing scientific research is that even when you publish your report on answering the question you were tasked with, you somehow still sometimes find errors in limitations in the data. So the timeline on our process varies, I guess, depending on the project. We've been working with NYPD data for over 10 years now. We started working with NYPD data under data sharing agreements. Now the data is publicly available, which is great because we can, access the data generally on a quarterly basis. That means that for this particular data set and for this particular project, there's no period in which we have to wait for data to be delivered through an agreement, which is great. Again, because we have experience working on this data set, we sort of know what to do with it in the cleaning process. Then we get to the analysis and then we realize, oh, we missed something. Then we have to go back and cleaning some of the values or addressing some of the issues that we fixed and then go back to the analysis. Our deadline on a report usually is what triggers or determines our timeline. All right, there's another question that says, can you talk more about the sources you're using to validate the NYPD data? Fidel.
Sure. So, looking at, again, so I think I mentioned at the beginning, like looking at agency information is really important. So one of the things that we do know exists is the NYPD produces a shapefile, which is just essentially a collection of like longitude and latitude points that can be processed by a computer to determine physically what a place or a defined place is. So the NYPD produces a file like that for its NYPD precincts. That information is how we map to validate most of the geographical information that is given to us, because we know that police precincts are very stable. Police precincts don't necessarily change over time. And are pretty well defined and pretty well defined information. So we trust the NYPD in producing an accurate shapefile for us to then map the information that they're producing to validate some of those, to validate that information. And then that informs the cleaning process as well. I hope that answers your question.
All right, the next question is, can you share your coding file?
I can take that one. I think we definitely as a team would love to share our information. We're probably just in the middle of our own projects right now. We would definitely, I think in the future, consider sharing our information for public consumption and public use.
Dr. Leo Moscatelli says, do you want to meet the GIS team in OMAP or with crime control strategies to discuss data gathering and methodology? Sure.
Yeah.
We've met, we used to work with OMAP way back when we used to access the data through a data sharing agreement, and we haven't been in touch in a very long time. We would absolutely appreciate being connected with OMAP and the crime control strategies again. Thank you for the offer. Wendy says she just wants to know that it is sometimes valid to have the precinct be the location of the incident. This would be the incident that happened at the precinct. Not sure if you have enough detail in the data set to be able to separate these from the rest of the data in the geotag to a precinct?
So for this is going back to a few slides, this is where we show the precincts 1A and 1E. What we saw is when we spatially aggregated the data to this specific shapefile, we did see that there were a few observations that fell within the center of the precinct, and that's when we saw that certain summonses were coded to that specific area. What for in terms of like arrest or complaint data from also from the PD, the data the dictionary do tell us that certain offenses are tagged to precinct, and that would be offenses like rape and sex crime, just for security reasons. But we do when we do the aggregation, we do get some offenses that fall within on top of the precinct.
Oliver, how would we know if anyone has their hands raised?
Kathleen just asked another question. How is what you do different from open data on NYPD? Are you asking a difference between data that we might be getting from a data sharing agreement versus open data? If you want to, I don't think it'd be a problem if you unmuted.
There we go. No, I was trying to see what the reports that end up in the open data are. How is yours different from those reports? Or do you cover different aspects or different kinds of reports? Sorry, I'm not a data person, so my questions are probably very basic.
No, that's a great question. So the difference is that open data is essentially a repository of all the information that the city of New York produces and makes public. What we actually do is we ingest the data, we produce reports, and we write up what is happening, and we try to tell stories with the data. So that's our primary difference. I'm not sure if how much reporting open data might do. I know the Office of Technology and Innovation might do some work in that as well. But we're a research group, and they're more of a repository, a warehouse for that information.
And where do you publish the reports that you do?
Sure.
Information.
We publish our reports mostly on our own websites. You can find us at John J. REC at .nyc. .com.
Okay. And the college supports you, or who funds your particular research section?
We are primarily funded by different individuals interested in evaluation of their justice programs. I think Sheyla could probably answer that question a little bit better if you're willing to.
Yes. So our funding comes from federal institutions, state institutions, and city institutions. Some private organizations or private foundations. Most recently, though, in the past 5 years, we've been working really close with the city of New York, different city agencies, one of them being the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice.
How long have you been in existence? How long has your research what do I want to say, research organization, research aspect been in business, or when did this research that you belong to start?
Well, the Research and Evaluation Center has been open since 1975, I believe. Can somebody check out?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
If I go to your site as a non-tech person, can I read your reports? I mean, will I understand your reports, or are they too technical?
So our mission is to make research accessible to anyone.
Good.
So we would love your feedback.
Okay.
who can understand it, then I think we are going in the right direction.
Okay, great, great. I think they call us late tech adapters.
And our contact information for anyone that's here is on our website. We pasted a link to our publications. But if you browse our website, you go to About, you'll find us. You'll find our information there, and how to contact. Does anybody else have any other questions?
So is the arrest data historic, clean, or would users of this need to copy your process to try to match XY coordinates or lat long coordinates to NYPD shapefiles? And are those shapefiles on the open data portal? NYPD information comes in two sets. So there's a historical and year-to-date set that I did forget to mention for both NYPD arrest and criminal summons data. So if you want the full series, you will need both of those individual data sets. They get updated quarterly from NYPD with the most recent quarter, and the historic is the most recent year. But yes, you would be able to use the shapefiles on the open portal and the land logs in the arrest or the criminal summons data to match and map what we've done here today. Open data portal, XY coordinates.
I can take the next part of the question.
Yeah.
In general, when working with data, and probably in general in life, a healthy level of skepticism is always good. So I can't think of any data set, although I was thinking just while you asked the question, that wouldn't require any inspection or cleaning process. The NYPD and the New York City open data folks have done an amazing job at improving the quality of the data over time. Like you saw in one of those graphs, the rate of the error has declined over time, but it is always there. And it always depends on the type of research design that you have and the question that you have. But we would absolutely encourage everyone to certainly spend the time to look for mistakes in the data before you go on to proceeding with an analysis and answering a question that you have with. Kathleen, if you share your email with us, either privately or we can certainly send you the sources, the links that we share. Alex Jacoby says, I just want to say thank you for walking us through some of your process. What cleaning data entails might include in welcoming us into it and inviting us to participate with feedback. Thanks for that, Alex. We appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. If there's no last minute straggling questions, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of REC for your participation and your time today and listening to us. We really do appreciate all of this feedback and discussion as well. It does make it a very collaborative process that I think we have all enjoyed being a part of. With that, thank you so much. And I really hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And thank you again.